It's good to have you here, Secretary Zinke. Appreciate your willingness to serve. Just one point of reference. If that Congressional Review Act would have passed on the methane rule, you wouldn't have been writing any rule because it would have forbid you from writing rules. So hopefully you can go by what Congress has said here and do everything you can do to not waste that resources as you have pointed out in your testimony thus far. I want to talk about LWCF because it's been talked about ad nauseum, and it's good because it's been talked about because it's a good program. It's a program that works. It's a program that takes the checkerboard out of the landscape by using easements. This budget cuts by $350 million. It wasn't exactly at a stellar level before. Remember, it was $900 million to be funded at when it was first put in. Can you tell me how the president or you can put forth a budget that really lacks the vision by cutting this program to this kind of money?
Well, as you know, I've long been a supporter of the LWCF program, and we and I agree in that. Overall, the program has done great things for our country. Some has been the appropriation problem. As you know, there's within the account, there's about $20 billion.
Are you talking there's $20 billion setting in an account right now that can be appropriated out?
There's $20 billion in Treasury, and part of the issue is there's not money in there. Is the methodology is
okay? I got the methodology. Years ago, in 1965, we were supposed to take our offshore oil receipts and fund this program. So if you take from 1965 to today, and the money that has been appropriated versus the money that was collected, you end up with $20 billion. The question is there $20 billion in that account, or has it been spent?
It's in Treasury.
So then if it's in Treasury and you want a balanced budget, it looks to me like you could have appropriated that at $900 million.
Well, I don't appropriate. That would be
you could have recommended that appropriation within your budget.
But this has been, as you know, structurally, as you know, the LWCF program, offshore, 38% was supposed to go in the program and appropriated to the field.
Yes.
It doesn't get appropriated.
But
So structurally, to change that would be if we're going to make the law do what the intention was, is it either goes direct or put caveats on it. So a long-term appropriation at the right funding would be done, and I agree with that.
Do you agree with that? So you advocate to put it back to $900 million, which is where the intentional program was initially.
What I advocate is for, and I'm a supporter of it. It should have been. Rather than going into Treasury, where now you have to get a loan to get it out of Treasury and make an offset, it would be nice structurally if it was stable, where the income would go into its purpose, and its purpose was the LWCF. This budget,
we had Secretary Perdue at one of these meetings last week, one of our subcommittee meetings, and I'll tell him the same thing. You are Secretary of Interior. This is an important position. It's one of the reasons I supported you in this position, is because of your support for LWCF. But we can't sit here and make excuses. Either we're for it or we ain't. And you know how good this program is. You know that these landscapes probably won't be here 10 years from now. And if what we do today makes a difference for those kids sitting behind you, the next generation of leaders for this country, and if we take away their opportunities, and I think land and water conservation, lack of funding in that does that, I don't think we're doing it a service. And so I agree, I know you're for it, but this budget doesn't indicate you're for it.
Well, what the budget does is it zeroes out new land acquisition. It does not zero out conservation easements.
Well, there's a ton of easements that will not get funded under this budget in Montana alone. And I can't speak to what's going on in New Mexico or Oregon or any other place. But I can tell you that folks in Montana have read this budget and said, including myself, this ain't going to do it. I want to talk about PILT. Cut. I think the chairman talked about it, or Lamar talked about it. These are hand-to-mouth operations of county government. They don't have access unless they increase property taxes to pay for schools, roads, building operations. What was the idea behind cutting it 15%?
Well, you're on appropriations. You may recall last year on discretionary, the amount was zero. It was zero. So this year was the first year we actually, this year in many years, We added 397 into the discretionary. That's a net change of 397 to the positive on PILT. Understanding it doesn't fully fund it.
In FY17, we funded PILT at $465 million. This year, this budget says 396. That's a 15% cut.
The previous president's budget
You know what?
had zero on
The
PILT.
previous president's budget, we fought with him too.
I
okay?
understand that, but I would think it would be helpful to have 397 rather than zero as a starting point on a budget.
I think it, truthfully, if you talk to county commissioners, and I know you have, you know what they'll tell you.
They would say, and I would agree
They
with
would say
them,
fund it.
that PILT is a priority.
Yep.
But it is easier in this budget to have 397 rather than zero of the previous president.
One last question, and it deals with the mine. We talked about this when you were a congressman from Montana. It's the mine out of Yellowstone National Park. I understand that there are, it's open for comments at this point in time. Can you give me an indication what kind of comments you're getting on that mine and on the potential that doesn't ever happen?
Well, as you know, as a congressman, I stood opposed to it. I just
Yes.
didn't see a process to go from A to point B
Yeah.
on that mine. And not,
Yep.
and I'll look. I haven't followed
Okay.
the comments on that, but I'll look.
It'd be,
give that-
if you could get back to me, I'd love to know what the comments are on that. And in the end, hopefully we can get a permanent withdrawal. I've got a bill to do that. One last thing, and I appreciate the flexibility from the chairman, but you talked about fair revenue a number of times. And I agree with that, and I think we ought to work with that. But I won't ask this question, but it does bring the question up. When we were doing a review of coal leases to get fair market value that hasn't been done in 20 years with the previous administration, and I was pushing them to get that done in 3 years, when you took over, you pulled that off the table. That's not doing justice to taxpayers.
The Revenue Advisory Committee looks at coal revenue as well as all the above. Because I'm a geologist, and I don't consider myself a genius, but I'm a pretty smart guy. When I can't figure out how we do it, how we evaluate and get revenues in it, either the process is not as transparent as it should be, or it's arbitrary. So coal is part of that rent and royalty review, as well as everything else across the board of what we do on interior lands.
Thank you for being here.